You guys, I have a special treat for you. Today we're going to do a real world velocity banking word problem. I'm going to write all of this down and then I'm going to tell you why I'm super excited about this. Okay, so this gentleman wrote in and his question starts with, I have 3 credit cards. My primary card is at $14,324.67. The limit is $14,500. Minimum payment is $438 due on the 2nd. Credit card 2 is $4,055.80. The limit is $4,500. The minimum payment is $103. It's due on the 13th. Credit card 3 is $1,200. The limit's $2,000. The minimum payment is $36. It's due on the 14th. Then he says, I have paid $200 3 times on credit card 1. I will pay another $200 a 4th time before the due date. I will pay a $118 bill with credit card 1. My cash flow for this $118 remains in my bank account. My question is, how do I roll the cash flow from credit card 1 to pay credit card 2 and still have cash flow to pay credit card 3? Y'all, I am super excited about this. And the reason I'm excited about this is because 3rd grade Molly would have freaked out over something like this. I actually developed an ulcer in the 3rd grade when I was in Mrs. Williams' math class because of word problems. And I had a mental block for years. And so this is part of, I think, a lot of people, when you have problems with the word problems, we get overwhelmed with the information. So we're going to break this down. So his question is, how do I roll the cash flow? Okay. So now let's go back up to the top where he says, I have 3 credit cards. Is that pertinent information? Sure. He wants to know how to roll the cash flow with 3 cards. Okay. So I make myself a visual. That's how I, obviously, because all of my videos are visuals. I need visuals. So I will draw out the 3 cards. Now, he gave us the due date, and I put that on the card, and I put, whether it's credit card 1, 2, or 3, all of that stuff. But actually, the due date is not pertinent. So I would eliminate that. If I was working this out on paper, I would scratch right through that, line through it, so it doesn't mess me up and overwhelm me. And then he had the information in there about the balance on the card and the limit on the card, but that's not pertinent to cash flow, how you roll the cash flow. So I would just line through that information. I don't need that visual as my brain is trying to figure out what he's asking. The minimum payment, sure, because guess what? The minimum payment is your cash flow. So that information is pertinent. I will keep that information. Then he says, I have paid $200 3 times on credit card 1. Well, that's your primary card. And then he says, I will pay another $200 a 4th time before the due date. So y'all, he doesn't spell it out. But what do I say about the primary card? That is only for your groceries, your gas, and your budgeted miscellaneous items. And just to be clear, your groceries and your gas, those have to be budgeted too. You can't just be spending willy-nilly out there buying yourself steaks and, big expensive salads and everything when you're on a budget. You have to know, how much can I realistically spend on groceries and gas and my trips to Walmart each week and stay within my means. So let's assume that $200 is what he spends for groceries, gas, and budgeted miscellaneous items. And so when he is going out and getting his groceries, he's getting his gas, and at the end of every week, he's paying for that. He's making a payment. So he's paying for those at the time with the credit card. And then every week he's settling up and paying for that because he would have been buying groceries and gas anyway. So he puts it on the card. And what that does is it meets that monthly obligation. It actually far exceeds his monthly obligation, but he's not adding to the balance on his card because he's paying it off every week. So $200 every week for groceries, gas, and miscellaneous at the end of a month is $800. And if his, monthly minimum is $438, he no longer has to come out of pocket for that because $800 in groceries and gas that had been paid every single week more than met that monthly minimum obligation. So now that's $438 that say is just sitting in his bank account. That's cash flow. Okay. And then right there, that $438 would cover the minimums for credit card 2 and credit card 3. But we're going to go on because then he says, I will pay a $118 bill with credit card 1. And my cash flow for this $118 remains in my bank account. Okay. Well, my question is, why are you paying that bill with credit card 1? Because the only thing that should be going on your primary card is groceries, gas, and budgeted miscellaneous. Can you put that bill on there? Absolutely, you can. Should you? No, because we want to make this as simple as possible. So if our groceries and gas are meeting our monthly obligation for our primary card, then we want to use that bill to meet the monthly obligation for another card. So when you look at credit card 2 and it has $103 due and you have a bill that's due, that's $118, then what you're going to do is you are going to make the monthly minimum payment for that credit card for the exact amount of that bill. So instead of $103, you pay $118. And then you wait for that $118 to come off the balance of that credit card. And when it does, it lowers that balance. Then you pay for that bill with that credit card. So you bring it down, you bring the balance down, you bring the balance right back to where it was. Because with your multiple cards, you're not looking to pay those cards down. You're looking to get as much cash flow as possible so that it can all be directed to your primary card. Okay. So you already have the $438. That's just cash sitting in your bank account. Okay. Now you've got $103 that you didn't have to pay out to credit card 2 because that $118 bill is now meeting that monthly obligation. And so you have the cash flow to pay for credit card 3 out of those two things, having your groceries and your gas meet the obligation for credit card 1 and having that bill meet the obligation for credit card 2. So you have $36 now to pay for credit card 3, and you have money to funnel back to that primary card and pay that down very quickly. So that's why I was so excited to share this with you, is because a lot of times we get overwhelmed with the information. But all he was asking is, how do I move that cash flow around? And it has nothing to do with your limit. It has nothing to do with your balance. It has nothing to do with like the due date. If you're just asking how, that's how. You have your groceries and your gas and your miscellaneous, all budgeted items meet your monthly obligation for your primary card. That's the only thing that goes on your primary card. And then you don't have to pay that $438 in addition to groceries, gas, and miscellaneous. Those items meet the monthly obligation for that payment. And then your bill that you have, the $118, meets the monthly obligation for the $103 minimum payment due. So that's $103 that's in your cash flow, just sitting in your bank. Again, that gives you the money to make sure all the bills are paid. And then you funnel, you redirect those minimum payments that were met with the miscellaneous bills. You redirect those minimum payments all to your primary card to get that one paid down as fast as possible. So I hope you guys got some value out of this video, because it's overwhelming sometimes, the information that's thrown at us. But when we just break it down and say, what is the question? Where is this cash flow coming from? Okay. How do we do it? We know what we're doing. We don't need to have all this other information throwing us off. If you have any questions, please post them down below. I hope that helps.